It began as an ordinary day. A man in Ohio sifted through a box of old change left behind by his grandfather, coins dull with time, edges worn smooth by decades of exchange. But then he paused. One silver-toned quarter caught the light just differently. It was a 1967 Washington quarter, no mint mark, no special shine. Yet something about it whispered value. What he didn't know at that moment was that his discovery echoed a hidden chapter of American coinage, a story of secrecy, transition, and unexpected wealth. Because within that simple 25-cent piece lies a mystery that has captured the imagination of collectors, investors, and dreamers alike. Some have called it a phantom of the mint, others, the accidental treasure. And as the numismatic world keeps unearthing astonishing auction results, one coin selling for over $466,000. The question echoes louder than ever. Could one of these forgotten quarters in your change jar be worth a fortune? In 1967, America was at a crossroads. The country was racing toward the future, rockets, civil rights, and rock and roll. But the U.S. Mint faced a crisis of its own. Silver had become too precious to waste on everyday coins. The Mint had recently stripped silver from circulating quarters, switching instead to a copper-nickel composition, a subtle change that most Americans barely noticed. Yet something else happened that year, something rarely discussed. To combat what the Mint saw as hoarding hysteria, a frenzy of collectors stockpiling newly struck coins for profit, mint marks were deliberately removed from all U.S. coins. Philadelphia, Denver, San Francisco, none of their signatures appeared. It was an attempt to cool the speculative fever gripping America's coinage scene. But in doing so, they inadvertently created the perfect storm for one of the most mysterious modern rarities, the 1967 Washington quarter with no mint mark. Now, every collector knows, a missing mint mark doesn't automatically spell rarity. After all, none of the 1967 quarters have one. But as with every great coin story, the devil hides in the details. What makes certain 1967 Washington quarters so valuable isn't simply their absence of a mint mark, it's the condition, the strike, and the faint whispers of error that set them apart. Imagine this, a quarter that left the die with razor-sharp detail. Washington's hair strands perfectly defined, the eagle's feathers glistening as if sculpted by hand. These are called full-strike specimens, coins struck with fresh dies, clean metal, and perfect pressure. They are exceedingly rare for 1967, a year when the Mint was producing billions of coins at lightning pace, often sacrificing precision for quantity. But there's more. A handful of these quarters emerged with a mirror-like finish, proof-like surfaces that reflect light like liquid silver. Experts believe some were struck on experimental planchets or polished dies used for special mint sets, the collector-only issues of that era. And when one of these anomalies surfaced at auction, authenticated by a leading grading service and boasting near-perfect preservation, it stunned even seasoned numismatists, fetching close to $500,000. Pause for a moment. Think about that. A coin minted in the millions, designed for everyday trade, now worth more than a luxury home. How could something so common become so coveted? The answer lies not just in rarity, but in emotion. Collectors don't merely chase metal, they chase meaning. The 1967 Washington quarter represents a transitional heartbeat in American history, the last breath of the pre-modern minting era, when machines still bore the marks of human imperfection. To hold one is to hold a fragment of America's transformation, when silver left our change and the spirit of collecting was reborn from scarcity. It's nostalgia wrapped in nickel. And that nostalgia drives prices higher every year. But here's where the story turns mysterious. Despite millions of 1967 quarters produced, only a tiny fraction possess the flawless luster, sharpness, or plancher anomalies that command life-changing sums. Some numismatists whisper that a small batch was struck on leftover silver-clad blanks from 1965, a theory that, if proven, would rewrite the coin's market entirely. Others suspect a few presentation strikes, coins minted under exceptional conditions for mint officials or testing, accidentally escaped into circulation. These legends keep collectors up at night, scouring eBay, estate sales, and old coffee tins. Because even today, unsearched rolls and inherited collections continue to yield surprises. And every discovery adds another verse to the ongoing ballad of the no-mint mark 1967 quarter. But let's break the myth from the measurable, most circulated 1967 quarters, worth 25 cents, maybe $1 if they're uncommonly clean. But an uncirculated one, graded mint state 67 or above by PCGS or NGC, can reach hundreds, even thousands. And at the very top, the flawless specimens, those graded MS 68 or proof-like, where the coin looks almost sculptural under light. The price can skyrocket beyond 6 figures. One particular coin, authenticated with mirror fields and a die variety unseen before, reached that jaw-dropping $466,000 mark at auction. That sale didn't just turn heads, it shifted the entire numismatic market. Overnight, collectors began revisiting their old quarters. Dealers reevaluated their stock, and new investors entered the field, drawn not by hobbyist curiosity, but by the promise of hidden wealth. Here's the irony. The mint once removed mint marks to discourage speculation, yet that very decision gave birth to one of the most speculative modern coins in American history. There's poetry in that, isn't there? A government measure meant to suppress collecting only deepened its mystery. Decades later, the 1967 Washington quarter without a mint mark has become a symbol of the tension between policy and passion, between order and obsession. But let's step back for a moment. Why do these coins matter so deeply to those who collect them? Why do grown men and women, investors with portfolios and professionals with decades of experience, still feel their heart race over a 25-cent piece? Because numismatics isn't just about currency, it's about legacy. Every coin is a story captured in metal. Wars survived, economies reborn, presidents immortalized, artistry frozen in time. For collectors, each acquisition is a chapter in their own journey, a bridge between the tangible past and the invisible value of memory. That's why a 1967 quarter can mean more than gold, not just in dollars, but in destiny. Of course, the seasoned collector knows that market tides rise and fall. Hype fades, but quality endures. True wealth in coins comes not from chasing rumors, but from understanding patterns, scarcity, condition, provenance, and emotional resonance. And that's what makes the 1967 no-mint mark Washington quarter so fascinating. It sits right at the intersection of those four forces: scarcity and pristine condition, beauty and strike, mystery and origin, and an emotional pull that bridges generations. It reminds us that sometimes the greatest treasures aren't locked in vaults. They're rattling inside old drawers, waiting to be recognized. So the next time you pick up a handful of change, pause for just a second. Turn that quarter over in your hand. Look closely, and not just for errors or shine, but for story. Do you see a common coin or a hidden masterpiece of American minting? Maybe, just maybe, you're holding a relic of that strange year when the mint silenced its own identity, and in doing so, accidentally created one of the most valuable modern quarters in U.S. history. And for the investor watching this, remember this truth. Coins like these are more than collectibles. They're time capsules, portable pieces of heritage that transcend markets. Their value may fluctuate, but their story only grows stronger. Every extraordinary find reminds us of one thing. History doesn't repeat itself, but it does leave clues. And those clues often come stamped in copper and nickel, tucked away in a forgotten box, waiting for someone with vision to notice. Somewhere out there, right now, an untouched 1967 Washington quarter gleams softly under layers of dust, a coin struck with perfection, overlooked for half a century. Perhaps it sits in a family heirloom jar. Perhaps it jingles unnoticed in a car's cup holder. Or perhaps it's already in your possession. The next $1 million coin isn't hiding in a museum. It's hiding in plain sight. So check your pockets. Open those rolls. Because the story of American coinage is still being written, and the next chapter might just begin with you, and a quarter that history almost forgot. In the end, the 1967 no-mint mark Washington quarter isn't just a coin. It's a riddle, a relic, and a revelation. It's proof that even in the ordinary, extraordinary value can lie waiting, invisible, patient, eternal. And perhaps that's the most powerful lesson of all. Wealth isn't always created. Sometimes it's rediscovered, so look closer. That shimmer of silver in your palm may not just be change, it may be your legacy. That's not myth. That's the strange reality of numismatics, the hidden world where history, metal and mystery collide to rewrite the meaning of value. Because somewhere, in drawers, jars, and coffee tins across America, one specific 1980p mint mark. Washington quarter is rumored to exist with a rare combination of minting errors, so extraordinary that it could be worth millions. Let's unravel that secret. The year was 1980, a moment of American transformation. The nation was caught between the memory of the bicentennial celebration and the dawn of a new decade filled with uncertainty. Gas prices soared. Inflation haunted every household. But at the Philadelphia Mint, presses thundered on, stamping over 635 million Washington quarters, bearing the subtle P mark, a first in U.S. history. Until that year, coins from Philadelphia carried no mint mark at all. But 1980 changed that. It was a quiet revolution in American coinage. A single letter, P, engraved into millions of tiny silver discs, turning each into a witness of change. Most of those coins went into circulation, jingling through hands, machines, and decades of commerce. But a very few, emerged differently, struck slightly off-center or on the wrong metal plancher. Others bore doubled features in George Washington's noble profile or in the inscriptions "Liberty" and "In God We Trust." These aren't manufacturing mistakes. They are genetic anomalies in the coin world, mutations that turn common currency into rare artifacts. Here's where the mystery deepens. In 2023, a verified 1980p mint mark Washington quarter surfaced in a private sale with a recorded market value of $461,000. Experts debated whether the coin's immense worth came solely from its rarity or from the feverish excitement of collectors who sensed something more. A once-in-a-lifetime find, the coin exhibited an astonishing minting error. A deep die clash combined with a misaligned strike, producing ghost-like impressions beneath Washington's jawline. The field shimmered with original mint luster, untouched by circulation. It was as if time had preserved it deliberately. Collectors whispered that this was the ghost strike quarter, a phrase that sounds poetic. But in the numismatic world, it's a term reserved for coins that seem to bear images from beyond the intended design. Could more like it exist? That question keeps collectors awake at night. Because if one such specimen emerged, others may lie hidden in attics, forgotten albums, or estate collections. Imagine being the person who once dismissed that quarter, who spent it on a cup of coffee 40 years ago, unaware that they had let a fortune slip through their fingers. This is what separates casual collectors from the true students of numismatic history, the understanding that value isn't always visible. It hides in the details, the angle of a letter, the depth of a rim, the shimmer of an unpolished field. Now, let's pause for a second. What makes a quarter, an everyday coin, so powerful? It's not the silver, because by 1980, the U.S. Mint had already removed silver from circulating quarters. It's not the weight or the metal. It's the story. Each Washington quarter carries the image of America's first president, his face stoic, his expression enduring through economic booms and recessions alike. Designed in 1932 by sculptor John Flanagan, the coin was meant to honor the 200th anniversary of Washington's birth. Few designs in U.S. history have lasted so long with so little alteration, and yet, it's the smallest differences, the mint marks, the errors, the rare die varieties, that turn these quarters from simple tributes into treasures. When a collector sees a 1980p quarter, they don't see 25 cents. They see potential. They see the whisper of a story that might not yet have been told. And this is where the psychology of collecting comes alive. Numismatics isn't only about coins. It's about control over time itself. Every collector, whether new or seasoned, is searching for immortality through preservation. To own a coin that outlived wars, depressions, and generations is to hold history captive in your hand. That's why when rumors spread of a Washington quarter fetching nearly $500,000, the collecting world lights up, not just with greed, but with purpose. It's proof that treasures still exist, that discoveries can still be made. But let's be honest, the odds of finding the 1980p era quarter are microscopic. Yet that's exactly what fuels the passion. Like gold prospectors in a digital age, collectors sift through pocket change, bank rolls, and online auctions not merely for profit, but for the thrill of discovery. And this isn't fantasy. Some of today's most valuable coin finds began with curiosity. In 2004, a Wisconsin state quarter with an extra leaf in the corn husk, a simple die variation, ignited a frenzy. Coins that once passed unnoticed were suddenly trading for thousands of dollars. In 2019, a batch of West Point Mint quarters entered circulation as a deliberate experiment designed to reawaken America's interest in collecting. It worked. So could a single 1980p quarter still be hiding in circulation? That question alone keeps the hunt alive. Here's something most people overlook. Philadelphia Mint coins often carry subtle striking differences because of their high production volume. In 1980, the Mint operated at near full capacity, and the wear on dies sometimes caused microscopic doubling or planchet imperfections. Under magnification, certain examples reveal extra ridges around the lettering or faint secondary outlines on Washington's profile. These nuances can increase a coin's desirability, but only when authenticated. And here's the twist. While the $461,000 specimen owes much of its fame to its unique error, its condition played an equally crucial role. It was in near-perfect mint state, graded at the highest level by a professional service. That's the second hidden law of coin value. Rarity means nothing without preservation. Think about it. How many potentially valuable coins have been lost to scratches, moisture, or polishing? One careless moment can erase a legacy worth more than a house. Collectors understand this intimately. That's why they store coins in airtight capsules, control humidity, and avoid even touching the metal. A fingerprint can change the grade, and the grade can change a fortune. Still, what drives someone to chase coins like this? For some, it's financial strategy, a tangible hedge against uncertainty. While markets fluctuate, rare coins often rise in value over decades, propelled by limited supply and growing global demand. For others, it's nostalgia, a yearning to reconnect with the era when coins mattered, when each one carried a weight of meaning. For the truly devoted, though, it's legacy. Coins are one of the few collectibles that bridge generations effortlessly. A collection isn't just an investment. It's a time capsule of stories and choices. A personal museum that can outlive its creator. And what better symbol of that legacy than a Washington quarter, a coin representing courage, leadership, and the enduring experiment of the American spirit? Let's revisit that mysterious 1980p picture-it, struck on a copper-nickel planchet, measuring 24.3 millimeters, bearing the familiar eagle on the reverse. But on this particular specimen, the eagle's wings seem slightly distorted, an echo of a misaligned die. Under certain lighting, Washington's cheek appears doubled, as if the portrait itself were trembling between realities. Is it a mistake? Or was it perhaps an accident with purpose? An unintentional masterpiece born from the chaos of mass production? Whatever it is, its existence changed the perception of what modern-era coins could be worth. It shattered the illusion that only pre-1965 silver coins held value, and it taught collectors a vital lesson. The modern age still hides ancient secrets. You might be wondering, how does one even begin to search for such a treasure? The truth is simpler than it seems. Start by slowing down. When you handle a coin, don't just see it. Study it. Observe the lettering, the shine, the strike. Does the mint mark look centered? Is the rim uniform? Do any features appear slightly doubled or misaligned? Next, consult reputable grading services or online archives of die varieties. Communities of collectors have documented thousands of known errors, but new discoveries still emerge every year. And finally, remember this. The real reward isn't always monetary. It's the moment of connection, The instant you realize you're touching a fragment of America's story that most people overlook. Because in the end, every rare coin carries two values, the one the market sets, and the one your soul assigns when you recognize its significance. Before we close, consider this small but haunting truth. Every coin minted carries the possibility of being the rarest of its kind. Every handful of change could hide something that rewrites numismatic history. Right now, someone, somewhere, might have a 1980 P. Washington quarter sitting unnoticed in a desk drawer, a piece of metal that, with the right eyes, could become a six-figure legend. So the next time you hear that familiar metallic clink of change, pause. Look closer, because the difference between a common coin and a life-changing discovery might be no more than a whisper in the metal, a faint error, a misplaced mark, a ghostly reflection of history itself. And if you're the one who finds it, you won't just be holding a coin worth millions. You'll be holding proof that even in the most ordinary places, extraordinary treasures still exist, waiting for someone curious enough, passionate enough, and patient enough to uncover them. After all, that's what true collectors do. They don't just collect coins, they collect time. And time, when struck by chance and preserved by destiny, can be worth far more than gold. Before we uncover why, take a moment to visualize that coin. The familiar portrait of George Washington gazing leftward, his jawline chiseled and calm, a design first introduced in 1932 to honor the bicentennial of Washington's birth. On its reverse, the proud bald eagle clutches arrows and olive branches, symbolizing both strength and peace. By 1990, that design had already seen nearly 6 decades of circulation. It was routine, almost invisible to the modern eye. And yet, that very ordinariness became its disguise. Because in the precision-driven halls of the Philadelphia Mint, something unexpected happened. A small number of these quarters left the presses with minute imperfections, striking anomalies and metallic secrets that would one day ignite the passions of collectors around the world. So, what makes a 1990 Washington quarter worth nearly $500,000? It isn't just rarity. It's the perfect storm of rarity, condition, and story. In the coin world, story matters. A coin without a story is just metal. But a coin with mystery, that's legacy. Some 1990 quarters exhibit die breaks, where a crack in the die left raised veins of metal across Washington's face, like lightning frozen in nickel. Others display off-center strikes, where the design drifts to one side, leaving wide, crescent-shaped blanks, errors born from the chaotic rhythm of mint machinery. But the true stars are the pristine survivors, coins that somehow escape the friction of daily commerce, never tossed into vending machines, never rubbed against keys, never worn by time. Those coins, preserved in mint state condition, gleam like time capsules from a vanished America. The early 90s, when the economy was shifting, technology was awakening, and the era of analog money was quietly closing its final chapter. The Philadelphia Mint struck over 600 million quarters in 1990. On paper, that sounds like abundance, not rarity. But in the intricate mathematics of numismatics, abundance is deceptive. Most of those coins have long vanished into circulation, their surfaces dulled and their details eroded. Fewer than a fraction of 1% survive in perfect condition, and even fewer bear the subtle traits that distinguish a collectible masterpiece. To the untrained eye, a $453,000 quarter looks identical to a 25-cent coin you'd hand to a cashier. But to a trained numismatist, it glows with clues. The exact texture of the luster, the sharpness of the eagle's feathers, the crisp alignment of lettering. Those microscopic differences are the language of value. Here's a surprising truth. The market for modern quarters, especially from the 1980s and 1990s, has exploded over the last decade. Collectors who once dismissed these coins as too new have rediscovered them as the last generation of true metal artistry before digital minting took over. Each coin, struck on solid copper-nickel planchets, reflects the craftsmanship of human oversight, slight imperfections, that today's laser-guided presses would never allow. The 1990 P. Washington quarter sits at the crossroads of two eras, between analog imperfection and digital precision. It represents, in a sense, the final breath of a hand-guided age, and that's where its magic lies. Let's step inside the mind of a collector for a moment. Every serious coin collector lives in tension between two emotions, nostalgia and ambition. They remember their first coin, perhaps a 1943 steel cent found in a drawer, and the quiet thrill of realizing it was something more than change. Yet, they also chase the next great discovery, the piece that could redefine their legacy. That's why coins like the 1990 Philadelphia Washington quarter ignite obsession. They sit right in the overlap, modern enough to be overlooked but old enough to hide forgotten treasures. And when the market whispers that one sold for nearly $500,000, collectors don't just hear a price tag. They hear possibility, but how does such a coin reach that value? Let's follow the money, literally. When a high-grade 1990 quarter appears at auction, it doesn't just attract casual hobbyists. It draws in investment-grade collectors, portfolio managers, and sometimes even private equity funds. Yes, you heard that right. Financial institutions now view elite numismatic assets as alternative investments, a hedge against inflation and economic volatility. Unlike stocks or cryptocurrency, a rare coin is tangible, finite, and steeped in history. A flawless 1990 Washington quarter, certified by the Professional Coin Grading Service, PCGS, or the Numismatic Guarantee Company, NGC, becomes more than a coin. It becomes an asset class, and as demand rises, so does narrative value. The emotional and historical premium that money can't measure but collectors gladly pay for. Now, here's where it gets fascinating. The most valuable 1990 quarters often have subtle mint mark mysteries. Though the Philadelphia Mint traditionally used the P mark since 1980, there exist whispers among collectors of transitional pieces or die experiments that may have left unique impressions. Some specialists suggest that faint doubling on the mint mark or anomalies in the rim edge might indicate early press testing. Others believe certain quarters were struck on planchets intended for proof coins, an almost mythic occurrence. The details are still debated. And that's the beauty of it. Because in numismatics, mystery fuels value. The unknown turns ordinary metal into legend. At this point, you might be wondering, could I have one of these treasures sitting in a jar at home? Here's the pattern interrupt. Statistically, it's possible. Out of hundreds of millions minted, perhaps only a few dozen specimens remain in gem-quality mint state. But those odds, small as they are, still beat the lottery. Collectors have found six-figure coins in inherited collections, estate sales, even parking lot change. The secret isn't luck, it's knowledge. You have to know what to look for. Razor-sharp strike lines, mirrored luster, and most importantly, the absence of wear. Under magnification, the tiny ridges of Washington's hair should appear fully defined. The eagle's wingtips should show every feather. Any softness or flattening instantly drops the grade and the value. If your coin passes these tests, professional grading is the next step. And that process, though it costs a small fee, can transform an overlooked quarter into a verified collectible worth thousands. Let's pause for a moment. Think about what that means. A simple piece of change, minted the year. The first Hubble telescope launched and the Berlin Wall fell. Could now serve as a bridge between your past and your financial. Future coins are, after all, silent storytellers. They pass through hands, pockets, and generations. They witness history unfold. The 1990 Washington quarter doesn't just represent a monetary unit. It represents a nation on the edge of transformation, leaving behind the analog century and stepping into the digital unknown. And perhaps buried in that symbolism lies its lasting appeal. Here's another intriguing twist. The psychology of coin collecting itself has shifted dramatically since 2020. During uncertain economic times, people crave tangibility, assets they can hold, display, and pass down. The demand for rare coins surged during and after the pandemic, not just among enthusiasts, but among families seeking to preserve wealth across generations. What was once a hobby has become a philosophy. Preserve what endures. Protect what holds meaning. And few objects embody that ethos like an untouched quarter from 1990, shimmering with the ghost of a million transactions it never made. But here's a secret few investors talk about: the emotional value of discovery. Collectors rarely buy coins purely for profit. They buy them for the chase, for the whisper of finding something lost, something overlooked. That's what separates this pursuit from mere investment. So when you examine your change jar tonight, you're not just looking for money. You're looking for history, for connection, for continuity. And that's why these coins matter, because they remind us that wealth isn't only measured in dollars, but in stories preserved through metal and time. Of course, not every 1990 quarter will make you rich. Most are still worth 25 cents. But the lesson isn't about luck. It's about awareness. In the world of numismatics, opportunity hides in plain sight. The next fortune might not come from Wall Street or Silicon Valley. It might be sitting quietly in your kitchen drawer waiting for someone with eyes sharp enough to see it. So the next time you hold a Washington quarter, take a moment. Feel its weight, its texture, the soft hum of history beneath your fingers. Ask yourself, could this be one of the few that slipped through time untouched? Because somewhere out there, among billions of coins, one still gleams, flawless, untouched, waiting to be found. And when it is, it won't just change one person's fortune. It will remind all of us why we collect, why we preserve, and why we believe that the past still holds treasures for those who dare to look closely enough. The 1990 P Mint Mark Washington quarter dollar, a coin born ordinary, destined extraordinary. Perhaps it's not just metal and design that make it valuable. Perhaps it's the idea that in every overlooked detail, every forgotten piece of change, there might lie the next great American treasure. And if you've listened this far, maybe that treasure is already in your hands. Its value? Nearly $445,000, yes. A single 25-cent piece. How does something so common become a national obsession and a symbol of hidden fortune? Let's dig beneath the tarnish and discover the mystery buried in the 1998 P Washington quarter. When most people think of collectible coins, their minds wander to ancient gold doubloons or Civil War-era half-eagles. But serious numismatists know the truth. Rarity is born not of age, but of anomaly. And 1998 was a year full of quiet anomalies. The Philadelphia Mint, one of America's oldest and most storied institutions, struck over 896 million Washington quarters that year. The machines ran almost endlessly, each blank planchet pressed with the familiar stoic profile of George Washington. That sharp gaze, frozen in eternal leadership. Yet amid this flood of production, a few coins were different. Perhaps it was a faint misalignment in the die, perhaps a subtle double strike, or perhaps, as some whisper in collector circles, a test run for a design never officially released. Whatever the cause, these few coins possessed an imperfection, or a perfection depending on how you see it, that made them extraordinary. And that's where this story turns from minting to mystery. It started, as many great discoveries do, with curiosity. A collector in Florida, a man who'd spent decades sifting through everyday change with a magnifying glass and patience, noticed something unusual. His 1998 quarter bore the P Mint mark from Philadelphia, but the texture, the luster, and even the relief seemed different. He compared it with others under halogen light, and what he saw nearly stopped his breath. The fields, the flat surfaces of the coin, shimmered with mirror-like precision, resembling the finish of a proof strike rather than a circulation coin. Yet no such proofs were known to have been minted in Philadelphia that year. He sent it for grading. Weeks later, the coin returned sealed in a transparent slab, authenticated, and verified as a 1998 P Washington quarter, exceptional strike error, MS-68 proof-like. The market went wild. Bids surged past $100,000, then $250,000. Finally, at a private auction whispered about in numismatic circles, the hammer fell at an astonishing $445,000 for a quarter once worth 25 cents. How could this happen? In the world of coin collecting, condition is king, but rarity is the crown itself. A flawless specimen from a massive production run becomes an outlier, a survivor against impossible odds. In 1998, most coins from the Philadelphia Mint entered circulation immediately, clanging through cash registers and vending machines, nicked and scarred within hours. Only a few escaped that fate, coins so pristine, they retained every microscopic ridge of their design. Now, combine that near-perfect preservation with an unexplained mint anomaly, and you have what collectors call a unicorn strike, the kind of coin that ignites bidding wars, magazine covers, and yes, lifelong obsessions. But beyond the metal and market value lies something deeper, a reflection of how Americans chase legacy through their pocket change. Every serious collector knows this feeling, the quiet thrill of possibility. You turn a coin in your hand, feel its weight, examine its edges, and wonder, could this be the one? That question, that heartbeat of hope, is what keeps the numismatic world alive. And it's not just about money. For many, collecting is a conversation with history. Each coin carries the breath of its era, the economy, the politics, the art of its time. The Washington quarter itself, first introduced in 1932, was meant to honor the nation's first president and mark his 200th birthday. Its designer, John Flanagan, sculpted Washington's portrait from a French marble bust, never imagining it would one day adorn billions of circulating coins for nearly a century, yet even Flanagan might have smiled to know that one of his 1998 descendants would someday rival the price of a sports car or a modest home. But there's another layer to this story, one not printed in auction catalogs or price guides. In the mid-1990s, as the Mint transitioned its machinery to prepare for the upcoming 50-state quarters program, small experimental batches were rumored to have been struck to test new dyes, alloys, and polishing techniques. Most of these trial coins were destroyed, but some slipped through. Was the $445,000 specimen one of them? We may never know for certain. Officially, the Mint denies any such experiments in 1998. Yet, every serious numismatist knows the unspoken rule: the Mint's silence often hides the most tantalizing truths. Pause for a moment and imagine this. Right now, in your own home, there could be a coin worth more than your car, your savings, maybe even your house, sitting quietly in a jar waiting to be rediscovered. It sounds improbable, but history disagrees. A single 1970 Lincoln cent struck on a silver planchet sold for over $35,000. A 2004 Wisconsin quarter with an extra leaf error reached 5 figures. And a 1999 Delaware quarter with a proof finish from Philadelphia, once dismissed as a myth, surfaced years later, fetching more than a luxury watch. So, what's really hiding in your change? Collectors know the market moves in cycles, like tides. Right now, modern errors, especially those from the late 20th century, are rising fast. As older generations pass on their collections, a new wave of investors and hobbyists are hunting for affordable treasures with explosive upside potential. The 1998 P. Washington quarter sits at the center of this trend, modern enough to be found, rare enough to be life-changing. And here's the secret few talk about. Eye appeal drives emotion, and emotion drives price. Two coins with identical technical grades can differ in value by thousands, simply because one gleams with that intangible spark, the shimmer that catches a collector's heart. That's why pristine examples from Philadelphia, especially with unusual finishes or doubled dies, are climbing fast. So how do you spot one? Look closely at the mint mark, P. It should be crisp, slightly raised, and perfectly centered. Check Washington's jawline. Is there a doubling, a faint shadow of a second strike? Observe the fields under light. Do they reflect like glass rather than dull nickel? If your instincts tingle, trust them. The greatest discoveries in coin collecting were made not by experts with microscopes, but by ordinary people who noticed something that simply felt off. One collector described it perfectly. Finding a rare coin is like hearing a whisper in a crowded room. Everyone else misses it, but you just No, there's a romance to this pursuit that transcends metal and money. It's the idea that value hides in plain sight, that fortune favors the observant, that America's legacy still circulates quietly in our hands every day. When you hold a coin, you're holding a story, one that began in molten silver and copper, passed through generations, and may end in your palm as destiny. That's what makes the tale of the 1998 Washington quarter so powerful. It reminds us that greatness doesn't always glitter immediately. Sometimes it hides beneath a thin film of fingerprints and years, waiting for someone with patience and vision to recognize it. And for those who think the era of great finds is over, think again. The U.S. Mint produces billions of coins each year. But automation, human oversight, and sheer scale ensure that anomalies will continue to emerge. Each mint mark, each year, holds the potential for discovery. Right now, collectors are quietly scouring rolls of late 1990s quarters, hunting for proof-like surfaces, doubled dies, and off-metal strikes. Dealers are reporting increased demand for high-grade certified examples, with MS-67 and above commanding steep premiums. The market, once skeptical, now hums with anticipation. It's no longer about nostalgia alone, it's about legacy. So the next time you hear that familiar clink of loose change, pause for a moment. Don't just see coins, see potential, see history. See the hidden wealth that might be whispering from your own pocket. Because the next $1 million discovery won't come from a gold vault or a museum, it'll come from someone like you, someone who pays attention. So, the story of the 1998 Washington quarter proves sometimes the smallest things carry the greatest weight. A sliver of copper and nickel barely worth a gumball can transform into a fortune and a legend. Collectors don't just seek profit. They seek proof. Proof that history still has secrets, that patience still pays, that beauty and rarity can still surprise us in the most ordinary places. So keep searching. Keep wondering. And remember, in every handful of change lies the possibility of greatness. After all, one coin, one seemingly ordinary 1998 Washington quarter, already changed everything, and the next one could be waiting for you.